Ooh, that is really loud. Get the college football playoff. I'll be honest with you. I'm experimenting with some things from my own studio. And Lee's going to let me know whether this thing's going to work or not. So we're just going to wing it today. This is what I like to do sometimes. We are on my YouTube channel as well, at Nick Cashew. Check that out because I like to let you see how I look half asleep at 6 a.m. Eastern on a Saturday morning. But this is how it goes. God. I cannot tell you how curious I am to see if this thing works. See, this is the one thing about me. Like, I'm totally willing to pull the curtain back on things and just be like, yo, we're trying something, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. That's just kind of become like the thing for me. So here we go. I'll tell you what, the NFL playoffs are absolutely loaded with questions this time around, though. Loaded. We still got that music going. Do we really need that in my ear? Can we check that, please? There we go. Thank you. Sorry, it's blasting. We'll get it right. We'll get it right here. Thanks, buddy. Look, the NFL playoffs are absolutely loaded with questions. I think if we sit here and look at this, parity is always something that people talk about, like they really like they're really interested in. But I think there are levels to it. You have to have at least like one villain. You have to have at least one situation where you're looking at a team where people love them, where people hate them. This is like, if I'm trying to think back, I've been talking to people about this too. Like, if you think back to where we are over the last few years in the NFL playoffs, let's just put it there first, because we know the college football playoff has had its own level of parity that's certainly been there. But now even in the NFL, and the NFL's trying to build this way, right? The NFL's wanted to have that parity. The NFL's wanted to get to a point where they're looking around going, oh man, like, yeah, like we want people to watch this and not know what's going to happen. Part of that is the Chiefs aren't in the playoffs, because even if, like, let's just play a hypothetical alternate reality here for a second. If the Kansas City Chiefs were in the playoffs right now, even if they were a team that backed their way in, 6 seed, whatever, however that would have turned out, wouldn't you at least sit there and go, they got a shot at winning the Super Bowl, right? We always think that. We always, at least from a hypothetical situation, always gave the Chiefs a chance. It's just how it went. And listen, that's a testament to that organization, what they've built, and all of those things. But they're not. We had 3 upsets last week in the wild card round. And I remember sitting in this chair on this show last week, and I said to you, we might be in for a wild day today. Now, one thing I got wrong, and when I'm wrong, I will say it. I thought the Panthers had no shot. They almost won that game against the Rams. So there's that. But you can't get everything right. I like to think that. Tell my wife. I definitely don't get everything right, but I try. 3 upsets last week. Both the 6 seeds won. And this is what the NFL is really looking for, right? This is what they want. It's the first time since 2020 that multiple teams that have been a 6 seed or lower advance in the divisional round. That it doesn't happen very much. That's great for the interest level. It's bad for bettors if you're somebody that dabbles in that. It's not a betting show, so don't worry. I ain't going down that road. But what I will say is this. Wouldn't you rather have an extra week of this as opposed to a week 19? Like, I'm going to continue to push it. If we need more games and the NFL needs an extra week, expand the playoffs. If last week wasn't an example and the potential of today and tomorrow isn't an example of how expanding the playoffs, if you have to give us more football, I know I say that and people are like, oh, we love football. Do you though? Like, isn't there a point where you've had like the right amount? Like, listen, I love pizza, but there's a certain point where I've had enough pizza. I'd like to stuff my face with more, but there's a certain point where I just go, that's enough. I can't eat this anymore. Like, I'm good. So if you're looking at what the NFL's given us and the parity and the way they've spread out these playoffs and these opportunities here, wouldn't you want to sit there and say, I could take an extra week of last week? Now, I get it. There's always a blowout at some point. So maybe we get that this weekend. I mean, there is a chance that some team comes back down to earth, especially with both 6 seeds advancing and, looking at where we are right now with 3 upsets last week, there's always that possibility. But you sit here right now and you're getting exactly what the NFL has wanted. You're getting exactly what you, the fan, wants, unless your team, is in this, then your only focus is like if you're a Bills fan today, you're looking at this with high pressure situation. And it's funny because the Bills are the Bills are a really weird underdog. Because obviously the Broncos are the higher seed. The Broncos got the first round bye. The Broncos are the 1 seed in the AFC. We got all this stuff. And yeah, come on. Don't we all know the pressure's on the Bills today? The pressure is going to be on the Bills, and more pressure each and every round. Each and every round. And if you sit there and you look at what has happened to the Bills year over year over year, you've gotten to this point where you go, it's now or never, man. It's S or get off the pot. Now, I'm not saying if they lose to Denver this weekend that you're going to go and look for a new coach if you're the Bills, because I can tell you this, people in Buffalo still love Sean McDermott. They do. Now, some of that is just the fact that Bills fans are like the nicest people in the world. Like that's part of it. Like if there's ever a fan base that I've looked at that I've rooted for, it's Bills fans. I mean, really, Bills fans deserve all of the success, all of the wins. And my team's not in it, so I don't really care. So I do that. But the pressure is all on them right now. And it like none of it is on the Broncos. Now, okay, there's a level of it that's there because the Broncos are still the 1 seed. But come on, if they lose it, what's the built-in excuse? Great defense, young quarterback, going to take them time. That's really what it is. Now, I know within the Broncos organization, they're not like Sean Payton's not looking to go, Bo, if we don't win this weekend, it's all right. You're young. We haven't got Sean Payton's not that guy. But what I am saying is from just and listen, perception is absolutely reality in this world. Whether it's fair or not, that's the world we live in. The perception is that the Bills have to win and that the Broncos are still a team that's that's like getting to that point. But when you fall short in the playoffs year over year over year, there's eventually a spot where people say, okay, what changes need to be made? Ask the Ravens. Ask the Steelers. I mean, we saw it. Like eventually coaches, less quarterbacks, mostly coaches. If you got Josh Allen, you ain't moving on, obviously, from that. But you sit here and you look and go, well, this has to be something where the Bills take advantage of these playoffs. Because if they fall short again and they lose to the Broncos, the question then just becomes like, has this team maxed out where they are? I mean, yeah, you can get aggressive this offseason, add another receiver or two. And I mean, they're the best running team in the NFL, and we know all that. But if that doesn't work against this elite Broncos team, then the question is like, what do you do now? Now, I don't think the Bills would move on from Sean McDermott, but I know that the questions will start to be there. And eventually everybody kind of hits their limit. Now, the one thing that Buffalo does have working for them is they finally won a road playoff game with Sean McDermott and Josh Allen. And like, they have not done that with those two guys together. And mental hurdles and overcoming them do matter. Not to get all like philosophical with you or, let's kick back and talk about how mental hurdles can be overcome and how we can work from them. You can save that for one of those other Instagram accounts that does that. But like, it's true though, right? If you're Josh Allen, if you're Sean McDermott and you win a playoff game on the road now and you look around and go, okay, like we've overcome this adversity. That is a level of adversity that they've overcome. And, this is something that matters to the Bills to be able to get past that. It's one of the most unique spots in a very, very hard to predict NFL playoffs. And, look, like situation dictates the success of a quarterback as a whole anyway. And I mean, Josh Allen has certainly benefited, it's a great situation in Buffalo, even if this team may be maxed out the way that they are. But I mean, I look at like Brock Purdy. By the way, the 49ers getting like no respect I know they're dealing with some injuries and George Kittle's obviously out now and it's been weird. And there's an electrical plant next to their practice facility and stadium that everybody's talking about now. If you still haven't seen that at this point, it's now mainstream. This is no longer some fringe, put tinfoil on your head kind of thing. We talked about this a little last week. Like it's everywhere now. Players are talking about it. I think Von Miller might have been like everybody. It's like a thing now. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's this big like electrical grid next to the stadium and the practice facility, and the 49ers are the most injured team since 2017. And now the internet's like, it's because of the wires. And I'm like, well, actually, if you look at the science behind it, it's kind of a thing. But that being said, it's obviously a great situation for Brock Purdy in San Francisco. And, the 49ers are a touchdown underdog today. They got the lowest odds to win the Super Bowl. And whether that matters to you or not, it still shows where the respect is. And, you're looking at this and like, I hear this phrase a lot, right? And it's like, well, and I'll paraphrase it, but you know what I'm kind of saying when I say this. He has so much talent around him. Yeah, I mean, Brock Purdy does have talent around him. Like every contending team has a level of talent around them, don't they? I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. Every contending team has talent around them. So, like, it's just this lazy argument, this lazy narrative that we've seen so much in just in in sports, but obviously with quarterbacks, especially ones that are as polarizing as he is, and then everybody sits and looks at and goes, "Well, is he really that good? Is it really just because of Kyle Shanahan, or is it really just because of the Christian McCaffrey in the backfield?" Look, we can't we can no longer deny the talent that Brock Purdy has. Can you make the argument that he benefits from being in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan and the roster they've built? Yeah. But you could say that about literally every quarterback that's out there. I mean, think about really where the 49ers are. The 49ers are in a position to still win this game against Seattle, despite what happened a couple of weeks ago against Seattle, because of Brock Purdy, especially since he got back to this, got back on the field from that toe injury and continued to make the 49ers one of the best offenses in the NFL. Like, we're past the point now where we can just sit there and go, yeah, Brock Purdy's it's just all about the system. Like, it benefits him, but like, you still have to execute the plays. You still have to make these plays. Again, the 49ers at one point had Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard at quarterback. Now, you could argue that Kyle Shanahan maximized those guys, but they weren't going to the playoffs with those two. I know the roster wasn't as talented as it may be now, but sometimes it's just a combination of both. Like, think about really where the 49ers are. They have tried to find their franchise quarterback over and over and over again. They trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, that didn't work. We thought it was going to at first. Remember, he started off 6-0 as a starter for the 49ers. And then we kind of realized, like, okay, I think once we get to the playoffs, the ceiling's kind of low. It's all about their defense and running the football. And, and they still were able to get to, they got to a Super Bowl despite Jimmy Garoppolo. But Trey Lance, how'd that work out for the 49ers? Well, that was a disaster. And then Brock Purdy just literally falls in their lap. If you gave truth serum to that 49ers coaching staff and front office, I think about this all the time. I wish we could do this. It's like, I really wish we could find a way to get like the true truth out of just like private situations. Like, actually, that's called alcohol. And these meetings do happen behind the scenes. But if you really wanted to get the truth out of John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, I guarantee you they would sit there and be like, I mean, we thought Brock Purdy would be a nice backup, but we didn't expect this. And sometimes it's just luck. Like, luck does happen in sports, and it's all right. Like, sometimes that's part of it. But I mean, dude, at the end of the regular season before that game against Seattle, and I know you could look at that and obviously say that matters today, which it does because, they're playing Seattle tonight. But he did have, back-to-back games with 5 total touchdowns. He's only the 7th player in NFL history to do that. Like, the ceiling is still very high for Brock Purdy. And I like the fact that he's even gotten a little cocky. That's not a bad thing. There's a level of confidence there with Brock Purdy that we did not have before. And, the 49ers are going to have to forget what Seattle did in them week 18. That doesn't mean, like, don't watch the film, but you're going to have to move on from that because Seattle did deliver an absolute defensive masterpiece week 18. I mean, that game was an absolute domination by Seattle's defense. And if you look at the playoffs as a whole, I mean, it's elite defenses that are winning games, that are keeping these teams in the playoffs. So as cliche as it is, defense does win championships. I think we're seeing that does work. The 49ers were held to 173 total yards and a field goal. Seattle gave up all these little underneath passes. They were like, all right, Brock Purdy, pick us apart underneath. A little 5-yard gain. That's fine. Keep doing that. Keep doing that. And it worked. So you can expect that to happen again. But I'm telling you now, man, like when you look at what the ceiling still is for the 49ers, even against the Seattle defense, I give the 49ers a chance, even with George Kittle, because of Brock Purdy. And it's a statement that a few years ago would have meant nothing to anybody. I would have sounded like a crazy person. And sometimes I still do. And that's how this works sometimes. But I mean, the level of success that Brock Purdy has reached in San Francisco and just how this situation has worked out as a whole, I think very few people would have ever really predicted this, honestly. And listen, It's a testament to sometimes don't we like those stories in the end? And really, like, we everybody's always been looking for the next Tom Brady, and maybe that's Brock Purdy. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Tom Brady or have the same level of success or all of the things are going to come together and 7 Super Bowls are coming his way. But what I am saying is that it's a very similar story. It happens occasionally, and sometimes it's not even about identifying talent. It's just there's a level of luck that's absolutely there. And look, that's where the 49ers have been. All right, experiment coming next. Again, like I said, I like to pull back the curtain here if we have to. We may not hear from PJ Glasser. Oh, thank you, Lee. So I guess we are good to go. Yeah, buddy. It won't be on the YouTube channel though. But I am on YouTube. Forgive me, YouTube. But we'll hear from PJ Glasser. And if Indiana wins the national title on Monday night, where will they rank among the unbeatens in college football? PJ Glasser next. Nick Ashew on Westwood One. It's all good. It's definitely super loud in my ear. Is that something I need to just adjust on my end, or is that on your end? All right, let me see what I can do here. Yeah, so it looks like something got I don't know how I got adjusted. Yeah, so that's more on my end, so all good. Sounds like it's better now. Can you just talk to me real quick? Nick Ashley, Westwood One Sports. Also back on my YouTube channel. Experimenting live. Gotta love it. Oh, we got football weather coming in. Football weather. I do a podcast also with a former NFL wide receiver, Anthony Armstrong. Some may remember him, some don't. Great dude. Big time deep threat back when he played. We were talking about the whole football weather concept yesterday, actually. Podcast is called Commander's Squad, in case you aren't a Commanders fan, but would like to dabble in some of that. Just free plugs all around here. Yeah, it's funny, and I asked him that too, because you know how these wide receivers are, right? These diva wide receivers, and they need everything perfect. Not all of them do, he's not. But like the concept of football weather is loved more by fans than a lot of players. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some, right? We know offensive linemen are tough and they want to go out there and not wear sleeves in 15-degree weather, and that's like that. That's what they love. Wide receivers ain't about that. Because here's the thing, too. Like, the weather does control the way the game can be played. It's just physics in some ways, right? We are talking about a temperature in Chicago that could be in the single digits at kickoff and a wind chill below zero. Let me tell you something. That ain't fun to be in no matter how tough you are. Like, this is the reason why they have domes on stadiums now. This is a reason why there's most new stadiums that are being built in the NFL. They're like, look, we need a roof. Now, I understand there's other factors. They just put out these renderings in Washington with how the Commanders' new stadium's going to look, and it's, been a whole thing all week in D.C. But, the debate is obviously, should it be open air, and should we have football weather? Who really wants football weather? Like honestly, first off, it's it's in the 80s in Chicago, I think, pretty much, or in LA this week. And if you're out in LA, Lee, good for you. Lucky you. It has been in the 20s in DC. It's been miserable, and I hate the cold. Now, again, I am somebody that doesn't like the cold. I understand there's some crazy people, especially out in the Midwest. You guys are just like the toughest. I've always said this. People in the Midwest are some of the toughest and nicest people, just like Bills fans. They're not in the Midwest, but I consider them part of the group because that's how they act. It's just like, oh, it's 15 degrees. Cool. We're going to wear shorts. Wait, what? It's just different. I'm not built like that. I'm not going to pretend that I'm built like that. But I'm also like a lot of people that look at this and go, like, who really wants to sit for a game out in single digit and wind chill below zero type weather? Think about the Kansas City game a couple of years ago against the Dolphins. People were taken to the hospital. Like, we talk about this like it's football weather. That's not football weather. That's frostbite weather. That's hospital weather. So it's really going to be interesting to see how this factors in this game this weekend with the Rams and Bears, because look, you're going to get the answers that you expect, right? Like, Tua Tagovailoa was always asked about that, never playing in the cold weather. He's like, oh, it's fine. I'm not worried about it. And I'll never forget the quote. He's like, I went and trained with my brother in Maryland. Like, bro, that ain't the same as what the temperature was in Kansas City. It's the same thing here in Chicago, where if you're the Rams, like, you can't simulate this cold, especially when you're living out in that beautiful weather that you've got out there in LA. You're Matt Stafford, of course, he says, like, oh, it's not going to be a factor. It's not going to be a thing. We'll be fine. Oh, really? Like, it's going to be a factor. Now, how much of that depends on game plan, too. The Rams have a strong rushing attack. That's what they're going to need to probably take advantage of. Put the ball on the ground a little bit more. I think this is a game where you try, if you're the Rams, to not have to throw it as much. If you can avoid it, eat some clock. Try to eat up the Bears' defense as much as you possibly can. But it's interesting because if you look at where the Bears are, they've got a couple of, well, one might be an advantage. One is definitely the level of experience, because coming in these playoffs, or what did I say about the Bears last week? The biggest thing for me was this group that they have doesn't have the playoff experience. It's a rookie head coach. It's a quarterback that's in his second year, but it was his first playoff game last week. But there's the whole 6 comebacks in the last 2 minutes during the regular season thing where you go, they got a 4-leaf clover up there, and then you go, wait, maybe that's actually going to be a factor against Green Bay. And shocking, it was a factor against Green Bay. So does that now become a factor along with being a little more comfortable playing in the cold if you're the Bears against the Rams? I mean, maybe. It just might. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like Caleb Williams has spent 6 or 7 years in this and he's used to it. Like, they may be running the football a lot more. Like, Caleb Williams has to be able to survive the Rams' rush, or their pass rush, right? Maybe running the ball a little bit more. This may be a game where both sides are just like, look, Let's get the ball on the ground. This becomes that old school football, grinding it out. And this is why I talk so much about, right, like defense mattering in the playoffs, because we're playing in January. And in some cities it doesn't matter, and in some cities it does. Defense does win championships, and this is an example of where defenses and running the football and that old school football still matters. Now, listen, I'm somebody that is in that boat that loves what the NFL has become in terms of high-powered offenses and protecting the quarterback more and throwing the football more and all that. And I get some people don't like that. That's fine. The reality is that's what sells. That's what gets eyeballs. People want offense. That's just how it works. But that doesn't mean that when you're building a team, the only thing that you do is focus on offense. Because when you get to these situations, like you're the Rams going into Chicago, and you got a wind chill possibly below zero, which is just, I mean, that's torture. I mean, the wind chill for me yesterday in DC was 13, and I was not going outside. My dog was like, "No, we're not doing this. There's no walks. There's no. I'll hold it. Like, I'm not even gonna use." She's like, "I'm not even gonna use the bathroom." Fine, don't use the bathroom. We're just gonna sit inside all day. It's awful. Imagine playing football in that. And again, you could hear, "Oh, these guys are tough, and this is why they get paid." And okay, I mean, sure, we can throw that around like next man up. I love that cliche too, but it only works so much. Like, this may be an advantage that the Bears just have. And here's the other thing: it's not just a level of the weather because they played in the cold. Because again, like, they're still human, and there's a level of like, hey, hands are frozen, can't catch the football. Like, that is actually a thing. But I think the bigger thing really for me for Chicago at this point is like how. So PJ Glasser, who was on last segment, right? College football, NFL guy, big sports betting analyst too. Bringing up the fact that the Bears and their ability to win these games reminded him a lot of the Commanders last year. And it is true. Like, there's always one team every year that has this ability, right? This ability in these clutch moments to just make it work. Sometimes it just clicks, and you can call it luck, you could call it skill, or you can call it mental fortitude, or whatever it is that you want to say. But in reality, there's always one team every year. And there was a couple years in a row. I want to say it was a couple years in a row where that was the Vikings with Kirk Cousins. And it was just like they were just finding these ways to win. Close games. They were winning. I want to say it might have been maybe 3 years ago at this point, but their point differential was like +1 or 2. Like, the games were as close as they could possibly be. Last year it was the Commanders. The Commanders were doing that. They were winning games where it felt like they were out constantly. They even had a game against the Cowboys when Marcus Mariota led a game-winning drive. And this year it's the Chicago Bears. And that matters. Like, I understand that, and I'm a big believer in experience mattering in the playoffs. Not just the NFL, the NBA, it's a big thing too. Because the game is different. In the NFL, the weather can be different, obviously. But when you have this ability and this resume that the Bears have, where any game can still be their game, you sit around and look and go, how can you count them out? Now, I'm not putting it at the level of the Chiefs and where they've been over the years, but you do watch this because it just felt last week, right? Didn't it feel last week where you're watching that game against Green Bay in the first half and still thinking, I just don't think Chicago's out of this thing, because there were so many opportunities for Green Bay to really put the thing away, and they didn't. Drives were stalled. Every single drive, though, it felt like, well, Chicago's got to score here. Chicago's got to score here. They're turning the ball over. They're held to a field goal, and you're watching it going. But yeah, Green Bay's not capitalizing on the other end. Chicago's still in this thing. And that's the biggest thing that the Rams are going to that are probably going to have in the back of their mind. And that's what's going to make just ending drives with actual touchdowns and not field goals matter that much for the Rams, because this is likely going to be a lower scoring game. The weather will play a factor. And when you sit and look at this and know what the Bears are capable of in the last 2 minutes of a game. Now, granted, it's not just the last 2 minutes. The Bears had to build up to that point, but that keeps them in games constantly. And it's a weird kind of dynamic that Chicago has where you look and go, this Bears group, Caleb Williams has 1 game of playoff experience. Ben Johnson as a head coach, 1 game of playoff experience. I know a lot as an offensive coordinator. That matters to a point, but as a head coach, it's still different. But you look at all this and just think, there's a chance Chicago wins this game if the Rams don't just blow them. If this was in LA, I'd feel different, right? Because the Rams play indoors and they're comfortable. Well, it's sort of indoors, comfortable weather. It's a lot different. But if this is more of a defense, run the ball type situation, now Chicago's had their ups and downs running the football. But this may be a Caleb Williams running for 60 yards in this game because the Rams are getting after him. And then that's the factor. Like this is probably the hardest game for me to read this weekend, just because the Bears are a wild card with that. Like they are legitimately a team that you watch and go, okay, they could be out of it, but how does this end up? And it's interesting because it's not like Caleb Williams was great last week, right? He was wildly inaccurate for a lot of that game, but yet at the same time making some of the most spectacular throws. I mean, the one now it's become a meme with him looking like Jordan. You'll see it. I'll try to do it on my YouTube channel. And it's not framed well enough. But yeah, he looked kind of like Jumpman a little bit. And you watch Caleb Williams in these moments and you go, oh, that's where all the hype was. That's right. There's the guy at USC that we remember. And, he can make these throws where Caleb Williams is running to his left and he's turning his body and just contorting it in these crazy ways. And you go, oh, yeah, that's why people compared him to Patrick Mahomes. So it's there. The talent is there. The ability is there. It's just the consistency that's really going to matter for him. And some of that is going to take time. Some of that is going to take consistency in the same offense and working with Ben Johnson. And it's certainly worked to a point for year one. But Caleb Williams was wildly inaccurate this entire season. Lowest completion percentage out of any quarterback this year. I think completed like 58% of his passes and was not all that accurate last week against Green Bay either. But they're finding ways. And that's, like everything makes sense for the Rams to go into Chicago and win this thing, but then there's these weird elements of the weather and Caleb Williams making wild plays at the right moment and the comebacks and all these things, and you go, you can't just overlook Chicago. You can't. You can't go into this and say this is where the road ends. It makes sense to say that. On paper, it might make sense, but like, dude, that doesn't mean that this is actually going to be how it works. And this is what I love. It's what I love about these playoffs, because you got the Bills as a massive, the Bills with all the pressure, but they're an underdog. Pressure's way more on them than Denver. And you're sitting here and looking at, what Chicago can do. And it's just, I love what the NFL playoffs has brought us. Like, I really have. This is a level of parity that does make it fun, but it's parity with good teams. It's not like parity where you're looking around like the college football playoff. To me, it's a lot of teams where Indiana, it's still hard to wrap our head around that. Miami's trying to make their way back and become a program that they used to be. So there's a lot. There is absolutely a lot to be able to pay attention to with this. All right, another hour coming up. Nick Ashew, Westwood One Sports. Cool. I'll be right back. Gonna grab some more coffee, buddy. Nick Ashley, Westwood One Sports. Streaming on the YouTube channel too, my YouTube channel. I got the hair all right this morning. Feel good on a Saturday morning. The best weekend in sports. It is. I mean, listen, I'll be honest with you. I love this more than the first weekend of March Madness, but that's probably number two. And then after that, it's like everything else is just kind of secondary. But normally you look at it and go, oh well, the wild card round kind of gives you that appetizer. Because the divisional round for me, when you look at these playoffs, you go, well, okay, the divisional round, it's usually teams that have earned their way there, right? It's either they've won a playoff game or they earned a bye, and you kind of get like more competitive games usually. But last week, we were blessed. We were bestowed by the football gods with nothing but good games all across the board, which does worry me a little bit that like there's going to be one blowout. I think there's going to be at least one. And like my gut tells me like the Rams just go into Chicago after everything I said at the end of last hour, right? And they just win that game. Because again, I thought last week the Rams were just going to beat the hell out of the Panthers. So like, did they take it out on the Bears this week? But how do you do this? How do you take the Bears? How do you not take the Bears seriously given what they do in these final 2 minutes of games? It's just it's unbelievable, and it just adds a different dynamic to any of these situations. And listen, isn't it proof that coaching matters? At least in Chicago, and I mean the Rams too, and any of these games. Like, let's not go out on a limb here, but you could just look at some of these organizations the minute they make a coaching change, and then everything is different. I mean, Ben Johnson has made the Bears a serious team now, and we know what Sean McVay obviously did with the Rams, and you could obviously go down the list. I mean, look at what Vrabel did in New England his first year, right? He's probably going to win Coach of the Year. I mean, the difference. I understand that there were other moves made in the offseason for some of these teams that helped a little bit. But, like, it's just, I mean, what Mike Vrabel did in New England, turning that thing around in 1 year. And it's why, honestly, I hate to say this, but it's going to be probably a year or so, and we're going to have to start taking the Giants seriously, too. Once John Harbaugh finally finishes his contract, and as I checked my phone this morning, nothing from Adam Schefter yet about making that official, which you kind of thought it would be at this point. But when you're talking $20 million a year and building the staff, it's inevitable. We know that this is inevitable, but I tell you what, it's got to be nice to be John Harbaugh and just say, yeah, I'm not going anywhere. You guys want to interview me? You come to me. I mean, I'll be honest with you guys. Seriously, I'll be honest with you. That's one of the most badass things that you could do as a coaching candidate, to just basically say, I know you want to interview me. I know that. What did I say last week, right? John Harbaugh controls the coaching cycle, controls the whole narrative. There was a trickle-down effect from everything else. You've seen coordinators get hired, but not a lot of head coaches, right? It's because it's all been about John Harbaugh. Every team thinks they have a shot. The Titans are like, hey, John, so what do you think? Think you interested in coaching Cam Morton? No? Okay. Oh, he hung up on me. Okay. He's not interested, guys. We're going to have to find somebody else. Mike McCarthy's available. God. This deal might even get done today. Maybe it's done tomorrow. But John Harbaugh is going to coach the Giants, and he's going to make them a serious team again. And, the NFC East, for those that may not remember, I don't even remember these days, really. But I've been told the NFC East used to be really competitive across the board. Every team all the way up and down. And, for so long, the Giants have been in the basement with my Commanders. But the Giants are a team that plays in New York with a lot of pressure and an ownership group that wants to turn this thing around. And if they're willing to spend $20 million a year, which is the reported number, on John Harbaugh and give him all this control and let him do whatever he wants and go to him, I think finally they actually met up and did this thing together. But at this point, John Harbaugh will raise the floor on the Giants very, very quickly. Now, the ceiling is another question, and I understand the criticisms, and I understand the issues that when you look at what's happened with the playoff letdowns over the years with the Ravens, you could say, yeah, but, and that's fine. But we're not talking right now about Super Bowl for a rebuilding team like the Giants. We're talking about a team that's been an absolute dumpster fire and a complete disgrace to the NFL for what feels like 2 decades. Now, it hasn't been that long. But since Eli Manning retired, where have the Giants been? They had one good year under Brian Daboll. By the way, coaching does matter. I still think Brian Daboll could be a good head coach, but he's kind of had his back up against the wall in a situation where, remember Daniel Jones, one good year with the Giants? That was Brian Daboll as the head coach there. So let's just keep that in mind. But John Harbaugh going into New York and eventually becoming the head coach of a Giants team that's got a young quarterback that needs a little coaching but has a lot of upside and a lot of talent. Jackson Dart is one of those, he's kind of like he's a wild horse, right? You just need to break him a little bit. It's like you see the physical ability that's there, but you say to yourself, we got to rein this thing in a little bit. Like, I don't know, teach the kid how to slide so he doesn't get knocked out in games. That's a good start. Cam Scatterbo back and healthy will be certainly a dynamic piece that you have in that offense. The Giants may have, somebody said this to me yesterday, though I don't believe it, I will go with this. The Giants may have too many edge rushers. Now, I will always live by the mindset of you can never have enough, but they're close to that. They've got so many guys that can get after the quarterback. And Malik Neighbors, actually healthy and getting the football once he's back, could be one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. So the Giants have a lot of potential. The Giants, with John Harbaugh now, a grown-up at head coach, an experienced head coach, someone that builds culture, somebody that shows, I know how to build a winning program. That's what it's all about right now. It's just about being relevant if you're the Giants. That will make a difference. And if you look at the NFC East as a whole, look at all this. Like, I know the Eagles are a mess, and I know the Eagles have a lot of things they're going to have to work out this offseason. But they're still run by Howie Roseman, essentially, right? Like, that front office and what you've got in Philadelphia is going to be aggressive this offseason. Howie Roseman already talked to the media and kind of made it sound like they're going to keep A.J. Brown. Spoiler alert, I don't believe that. But we can make fun of the Cowboys all we want. Dak Prescott's still a really good quarterback in the regular season. Jackson Dart kind of reined in a little bit. If he grows up, gets a little more mature, gets smarter, plays better, from just a controlled perspective, you got a quarterback situation in there and an offense that could actually start to click for the Giants. Jaden Daniels and the Commanders is going to be aggressive this offseason. Jaden Daniels healthy. You got a quarterback situation there that obviously we know the upside, given what the Commanders did last year. I try to remember that and not what happened this year, but that's a whole thing. You look around and go, okay, if the Eagles can figure out their offensive coordinator situation and get the most out of Jalen Hurts probably has the lowest. In fact, I'll say this. Jalen Hurts has the lowest ceiling out of all the quarterbacks in that division. But we've seen that offense click, and let's not forget that the Eagles just won the Super Bowl last year. So the NFC East could be completely different in a year or two. And a lot of that comes with John Harbaugh and what he's able to do. And look, Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin, too, both, these are coaches that raise the floor. Sometimes it's about starting off with just raising the floor. If you're an organization that's been where the Giants have been or where insert team that needs a new head coach here, like even the Patriots. The Patriots, once Bill Belichick left and they mutually agreed to part ways, Gerard Mayo kind of knew right away, like, ooh, this guy's going to be a placeholder, isn't he? This ain't going to work. And it's tough. Look, it's tough to be the guy that follows the guy, and I understand all that. But Mike Vrabel came in. They were aggressive in the offseason, too. And it went from originally it was just thinking they were going to raise the floor, and there's actually, some serious potential for the Patriots even this year. But when you get, it's because it's not just the coaching and the X's and O's, because a head coach in the NFL has so many responsibilities, right? Like a head coach in the NBA has a lot of individual control on what's going on out there, but head coaches in the NFL have so many different ways that they can approach it. And some of it is just being more of the CEO. Some of it is being more of just the walk-around head coach, where it's you've got your offensive coordinator, you've got your defensive coordinator, and you look around and say, you handle this, I'm going to allocate all of the responsibilities, and I'm going to make sure everything's going smoothly. And then on game day, it's making sure everybody's handling things. You're not calling plays and all of that. But that also trickles down to everywhere else. That's the culture. That's the mindset that a team has. The little things that you don't show up in the standings and the box score and like all this, but it matters. And it's just being a leader, and it's understanding what it takes to build that culture. And John Harbaugh, there's a reason why the Giants are willing to pay him $20 million. They are desperate. And there's a reason why he wants to go to the Giants. He sees some potential there. And you put all that stuff together and you look and go, this may actually work. Like, this may actually work. Now, I'm not saying right away, but I can tell you this, the Giants are going to be aggressive, and you're going to see a team that you're going to see a team that's not a laughingstock like they've been. I mean, even this year, you go, oh, rookie quarterback, and it's fun, and Cam Scatterboo, and woo, this is great. But, like, realistically, you watch that team and go, they had a long way to go. But you got to rein a lot of that in. There needs to be a level of maturity. When you got a lot of young, talented players, it's great, but they also have to be mature. And that's what was missing. And, like, Mike Tomlin, very similar. It's just ironic that Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh, both kind of the longest tenured coaches, both out at the same time, both similar results in Pittsburgh and, Baltimore and rivals and, like, all these things. What if Mike Tomlin's never even coaches again? Like, I do think he will. He could be really good on TV, though. It sounds like that's going to be the move this year for him. But Mike Tomlin's another guy that builds a level of culture, but has always had really a lower ceiling. They did not win a playoff game since 2016, if you're the Steelers. The expectations are Super Bowl every year. Now, are those realistic expectations every year? No. The same thing in Baltimore. There were times where it just wasn't realistic. Some of it was the injuries. Let's not forget, Baltimore dealt with a ton of injuries year after year after year, it felt like, and a lot of it is your quarterback. And when your quarterback's dealing with those injuries, the Ravens were not the same team. The Ravens at the end of the season, when Lamar Jackson is playing one of the best teams in the NFL, Lamar Jackson, the last 2 weeks of the regular season, best quarterback in the NFL. Look at the numbers, stats, all those things. Like, if you it is a fact. But it was too little, too late this time around, and that was the end. Like, that's what made the change have to happen. But Mike Tomlin goes anywhere, he's going to change the culture. He's going to be able to turn things around in terms of just making it a respectable organization kind of quickly. But it then becomes the ceiling. But that's not the expectation now for the Giants. That wouldn't be the expectation necessarily year one for wherever Mike Tomlin goes if he decides to coach again down the road. There's a lot of, like, coach or quarterback, right? That's the question you see so much in the NFL. A lot of times it's just both. Because realistically, if you look at where Mike Tomlin was with Ben Roethlisberger in his prime, it worked for both of them. Really, it's not always just, well, Mike Tomlin made Ben Roethlisberger or Ben Roethlisberger made Mike Tomlin. Now, you could argue to a point Tom Brady certainly got the advantage at the end of his career winning that Super Bowl without Bill Belichick, but let's not pretend that Tom Brady, early young Tom Brady, game manager Tom Brady, didn't benefit from the Bill Belichick coaching, didn't benefit from the Patriot way. It's just that Brady was just so good and so efficient and so smart and so dedicated to getting better that he just advanced past anything Bill Belichick could teach him. But there was a long period of time where Tom Brady needed what Bill Belichick brought to the table, but it also clicked with Bill Belichick. They made sense together. There was cohesion, if you will. There was, as management would love to say, synergy. There was a lot of synergy that was there. But that happens a lot in the NFL because of how important quarterbacks certainly are. And we may see that with Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson, where that becomes the right situation. That's why so many teams are looking for the offensive-minded head coaches, because that still sets the tone for everything else around the organization. Now, you got to have great coordinators because you want to keep the systems the same. You want to have that consistency. But there's no guarantee that great offensive coordinator is going to stick around. So you do still have to look at the head coach, their mindset, and their understanding and how to be a leader and build all these things beyond just the X's and O's and game plan and the install and all that. You have to go past that a little bit. And it'll be really interesting to see what Harbaugh certainly does in New York and how quickly that turns around and how aggressive they are. But, I mean, we've seen this. We've seen one-year turnarounds. Look at Chicago right now. I mean, look at New England right now. In the divisional round of the playoffs, both these teams, these are first-year head coaches. Now, Vrabel, obviously not a rookie head coach, but it's still his first year in New England. So there's still a level of, like, one quick turnaround can change things. I know people want to laugh at this. I've seen it a lot. Giants could legitimately be a playoff team next year. There is a chance that happens. Now, the NFC is crowded, but do the 49ers take a step back next year? Do the Eagles have issues with whoever they hire at offensive coordinator still? Does that, again, I believe that Howie Roseman is going to always be aggressive, but there's only so much that you can do sometimes. And the 49ers at some point are going to get older. Brock Purdy's not a part of that, but Christian McCaffrey's only getting older. You're going to have George Kittle probably out for, a torn Achilles. You're missing most of, if not all of next season at this point, given when the injury happened. And, you start going down the list and go, yeah, maybe the Giants are that team that sneaks in next year. It happens every year. There's always a worst to first team. And there's a chance that becomes the Giants. It just depends on what that organization does this offseason, how they draft, free agency. I mean, all that. There's a million factors that get put into that, but it's just something to think about, right? And then look, I'd even go look at the Rams too, right? Shanahan and Purdy is one thing, but look at the Rams. Sean McVay got there and made Jared Goff. I understand has had a lot of success in Detroit, and Ben Johnson was a big part of that. But let's also go look at Jared Goff as a quarterback with the Rams. He went from Jeff Fisher, perennial 7-9 head coach, sometimes 8-8 if he was lucky, to Sean McVay coming in right away and hitting the ground running with Jared Goff. But Jared Goff has continued now. He's learned. He's grown from that. So this whole narrative, like it's either the coach or the quarterback, and it's kind of both. Can be both. And then they grow from it. They learn from it. And then you continue to just move on from what you've had. It just makes such a difference. It really does when you've got that right combination. All right. National championship game Monday night. Do we see the birth of a dynasty with Indiana? Maybe. Sounds crazy, but it could be. Nick Ashew, Westwood One Sports. Nick Cashew, One Sports. Streaming on YouTube as well. Pine Needle in YouTube comments. Pine Needle, avid watcher, listener, YouTube. Point out, 49ers did get a lot of their dead weight before this year. It's just, younger team, which is true. In some of the key spots, it's young. And listen, if you're the 49ers, you got to keep doing that because you do have some older talent that at some point, like, you hope that Christian McCaffrey's got 5 years left and you can use him maybe more as a wide receiver. Christian McCaffrey's interesting to me. I'm actually really curious to see where Christian McCaffrey's career goes because he's so valuable as a wide receiver. I've always said this, right? Like, people talk about the death of the running back in the NFL. It was like the death of the big man in the NBA. Well, the big man's back in the NBA. It just looks different. Disappeared for a while, came back, reinvented itself, evolved, right? Like a motivational speaker. Disappear and come back and reinvent yourself. That's kind of the running back, right? I mean, McCaffrey's been doing this for a while, but some of the younger guys like a Jahmyr Gibbs or a Bijan Robinson, if you're a young running back today and you know that that's the position you're going to play and you think you can get to the NFL, you better learn how to catch footballs too. You can't just run. Because that's where the versatility comes in. Can you line up in the slot? Can they count on you as a receiver out of the backfield? Are you a dynamic playmaker? Just get the ball in their hands. Like, that's something that matters. That was Deebo Samuel in his prime. And he did it at times for Washington this year, but they tried to use him as a number one receiver, and that wasn't going to work. It's just wasn't the spot he was supposed to be in. So, like, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. But, like, I really do look at how the running back is going to change over time, and that's how you make it work. McCaffrey could last 3 or 4 more years if he's not just running the ball as much and they use him more as a receiver. But the 49ers do a great job, and you have to, of continuing to develop some of that younger talent. One, because they're dealing with all those injuries, as we've pointed out. And two, they're not going to move away from that electrical grid. It ain't going to get any better. So you got to get young. Those younger bodies, the electricity running through your body doesn't affect the ligaments as much. I'm fascinated by that story, by the way. Like, I really am, because now players are talking about it. And it's like, that stuff is true. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're just going to have to look it up, because we can't spend an entire segment doing that. It's interesting, though, when you talk about quarterbacks and developing and growing, right? Like Jared Goff, even under Sean McVay, and then Matt Stafford winning a Super Bowl finally with Sean McVay, and some of these younger quarterbacks, Ben Johnson getting the most out of Caleb Williams and all that. I'll say this too. Sam Darnold is a great example of that. Now, I'm not putting Sam Darnold on their level, but what I will say is Sam Darnold is a great example of how situation can dictate the success of so many quarterbacks. Brock Purdy will be that way too. Brock Purdy going to a losing organization is not going to be the same guy. Okay, so we're going to hold that against him? Like, yeah, the 49ers have a lot of talent and great coaching. That's what gets the best out of players. Sam Darnold is a great example of going to the Jets. Your career is going to be terrible. The minute you leave, you can then become a better quarterback. Zach Wilson, I don't know. Sam Darnold, yes, we've seen it. Think of now he's dealing with an oblique injury all of a sudden that came out of the blue. Looks like he's going to play against the 49ers. So that's probably not going to be an issue other than maybe it's bothering him, but he's going to be out there. That did pop up out of nowhere. I looked at my phone and I was like, Sam Darnold oblique. Where did this come from? But keep an eye on that if you're dabbling in any props just a little bit. But if you look at Sam Darnold's career, he starts with the Jets. Obviously, that's where careers go to die, which probably part of the reason why Dante Moore said, I think I'll go back to school for another year and get a reported $7 million in NIL money. I would too. Let's see. Go to the Jets, kill your career right before it starts, get $7 million, go back to school, even if you got a split time at quarterback. The Dylan Raiola thing, I don't know how that's going to work, but that's fine. I'm going to choose to go back to school and not go to the Jets. Certain point where, like, do young quarterbacks just look and go, I'm pulling an Elway. We're not doing it. Eli Manning, I'm just not going to the Jets. They ruin everybody's career. That's at least at quarterback. But Sam Darnold then goes to Carolina, has like a couple weeks where he's running the football. He's getting like 2 rushing touchdowns a game. We're like, is this going to be Sam Darnold? Doesn't work there. Carolina was still a mess at that point too. But then he figures it out in Minnesota after going to where? Oh, San Francisco. Kyle Shanahan, coaching, learning, taking a year off. I've always said this about young quarterbacks. If you get drafted, because you can't control where you're going, right? Like, young players do not control the trajectory of their career. You get drafted, that's where you're going to be. Kind of sucks, but, the contract can help out a little bit with that. But when you get an opportunity, let's say it doesn't work out your first stop. If you have an opportunity to go and spend a year, maybe it's 2, whatever, learning, but being a backup for a really good organization, in a really good offense, with a really good head coach, offensive coordinator, offensive coaching staff, take advantage of that. Sam Darnold is such a great example, and we may be making the same argument for Mac Jones in the future too. Because Mac Jones looked great with the 49ers when Brock Purdy was hurt. Now, there's a lot of reports that Mac Jones is who Kyle Shanahan really wanted anyway. We know Trey Lance didn't work out. But sometimes you have to take a step back to take that step forward. Now, Sam Darnold is not the best quarterback in the playoffs right now. And we know that Seattle defense is the main reason why they've had this level of success. They've obviously got a couple of running backs that they can count on, and there are other things there beyond that. Sam Darnold just can't lose them these games. But what we've seen from him overall, let's just go Sam Darnold post-Carolina. Come on. You can't tell me that he didn't learn under Kyle Shanahan and then Kevin O'Connell and really grow and mature as a quarterback and get better, because we obviously saw it in Minnesota. It got him $100 million in Seattle, and a lot of people thought even Seattle was crazy going and saying, well, let's give Sam Darnold $100 million. Is that going to work here like it did in Minnesota? Minnesota wishes they had Sam Darnold back right now, right? Because where are they? They're not in the playoffs. Seattle is, and it has worked for them. But we've gotten to the point now with quarterbacks in the NFL where it becomes so much about either franchise quarterback, backup. Like, there's no middle ground anymore. A lot of it is because that's how you pay quarterbacks and you just have to deal with it. Sam Darnold is an example of that guy right down the middle. And Bryce Young may end up being that guy too, right? They picked up his option in Carolina, but they're going to have to start talking about, what does that extension look like? Is it a shorter-term extension? Sam Darnold didn't get some big, massive deal by quarterback standards. $100 million is great, and it's great for a lot of NFL players, but it's similar to Baker Mayfield, another one. Baker Mayfield went through the same thing, though he did have some success with the Browns, especially his rookie year. Injuries, all that, moves on, goes to Carolina. We know that was a mess, but where does Baker Mayfield go? He goes to the Rams. He plays for Sean McVay. He learns, then goes to the Bucs, has a couple of really good offensive coordinators. Didn't have that this year. They fired their offensive coordinator, but sometimes it takes a longer, winding road for these quarterbacks that have high expectations for it to actually work out. They have to go learn. They have to go be a backup for a little while. They have to spend some time just figuring out what works best for them, learning from a good coach, because you can't control your trajectory. I will never fault a quarterback who says, I'm going to take a step back for a year and I'm going to go learn somewhere. A lot of quarterbacks that let ego get in the way, and they think, I want to go be a starter no matter what. Okay. Would you rather be a starter for the Browns and have your career fizzle away? Or would you rather take a step back for a year and be a backup for the 49ers or for, the Rams or whoever and play in these offenses? A Kevin O'Connell. By the way, Daniel Jones also, people forget, Daniel Jones, part of the Vikings organization for a little while, learned under Kevin O'Connell before he went to the Colts and had a great year this year too. You see a pattern here? There's a pattern, and it continues to happen over and over and over again. Coaching makes a difference. And we even see it in college football, right? National championship game Monday night. Look at what Kurt Cignetti's done with Indiana. Now, it's not an apples-to-apples comparison, but it's a great example. Like, coaching matters so much in football, and it's not just the X's and O's. Man, it's about what they can actually do individually with players, seeing the most out of them. Phil Jackson and Greg Popovich would always talk about this. And these are two examples, but there's plenty of other coaches and lots of great leaders out there in any industry that have said this. It's not about just coaching one way, right? It's about tailoring how you motivate and how you talk to and how you just interact with each individual player. Everybody's got a different personality. Everybody needs something different. Everybody needs something to be said. Some guys need to be coddled a little bit more. Some guys need to be yelled at, and they get motivated doing that. There's a lot of different ones that are out there. Kurt Cignetti, we know, kind of a hard ass, but it's worked. It's worked at Indiana, right? It's incredible to think of how quickly this Indiana program has gone from absolute, people would forget before Kurt Cignetti was there that Indiana actually had a football team. Really. And they have been absolutely dominating. I mean, even go back to Indiana is beating teams like Alabama and Oregon, and it's like, what, I think it was like 94-25 was the combined scores for those games. And you're looking around going, oh man, this is legit. Kurt Cignetti winning. He wins everywhere he goes. He's right. Google him. Though I do want to know whether or not he's actually going to smile when they win the national championship, because it feels inevitable, doesn't it? I know we have all of this parity technically in the college football playoff this year because we don't have a Georgia, because we don't have an Alabama or an Ohio State in the national championship game. But Indiana, it's basically about the name across their chest right now, right? At this point, you're shaking a reputation, and that takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. Because when you have a reputation as a college football program, as an organization in the NFL, if your reputation is losing or you're an afterthought or you're a nobody program, which, sorry, that's what Indiana was. That's a basketball school until now. Now they're a football school. Got to keep it going, but they are a football school. When you have a reputation of being a certain way, and it's also people too, right? We all got that friend. Still goes out to the bars, still does what he did when he was 23. He's enjoying it, but then he tells you, hey, man, it's like, I really got to grow up. I want to settle down. I don't want to be going out and partying the way that we used to. I'm trying to, get married. And this friend is that dude, and he's been that way for 15 years. You going to believe that instantly? No, you're not. You're not going to believe that instantly. It doesn't mean that he can't change. But what it means is that reputation takes time to shake. And I think that's where we are with Indiana at this point now. Because it's weird to see a number one next to Indiana, right, on anything when it's football. But at some point, this program, if you're not already taking it seriously, you're going to start taking it serious. And this is where Indiana starts to evolve from amazing underdog story to legit program where it sounds crazy now, but Kurt Cignetti could be the next Nick Saban in college football. I mean, with what he's able to do to turn this program around so quickly and the personality, let's be real, kind of matches Nick Saban a little bit, doesn't he? Embraces the grumpy coach. I'll never smile. Google me. I win everywhere I go. Maybe does it. I mean, Nick Saban at least did it when they finally won national titles. And again, it's a long way to go from that, but there was a certain point where you could say that about any coach, about any program, about any, remember, there was a point where the Patriots were a dumpster fire way back before Bill Belichick. There was a point where the Chiefs were nobodies before. Now, they had some good years with Alex Smith, but they weren't where they were before Patrick Mahomes. Like all of these things, right? Turnarounds happen. It changes. The Warriors, man, the Warriors were a dumpster fire. Mark Jackson kind of propped them up, got them about 47 wins the last year. Steve Kerr comes in, makes them a dynasty. So it takes time to shake your previous reputation. When people say Golden State Warriors now, they think dynasty. They think great franchise. They think, great head coach, Steph Curry, all those things. You didn't think that back in the day. Steph Curry had ankle problems and couldn't stay healthy. Had to shake that reputation. So it's hard to just keep a reputation forever if you're working to change it, but it doesn't happen overnight. And I think that's where Indiana really is now. Indiana's on that verge. Now, granted, you got to have a good recruiting class. You got to be really good in the transfer portal, and all these things are going to take some time to build up. Because I will say this. If I'm a 17 or 18-year-old kid and I'm getting recruited by Indiana or Ohio State or Georgia right now, if the opportunity is pretty much the same in terms of like how much playing time I'm going to get and what the opportunity is going to be, I'm still taking Ohio State or Alabama or Georgia. Or I'm still going that route. But if I'm 11, 12, 13, and you've still got years to go and you're a great, kid playing football, and you see Indiana doing this for the next 3-4 years, you're going to start considering going to play for Indiana and Kurt Cignetti. It's going to change. And that's what reputation is. It takes time to get to that point. But we're on the verge of that potentially happening. There's no guarantees that happens because you've got to keep this momentum going. But if there's any coach at this point that's shown that they can make it happen, it's Kurt Cignetti. And how can you not root for this guy? How can you not root for Indiana? I mean, I've been all in on this. I don't have a dog in the fight in this. I don't care. How can you not, if you're not a fan at this point, if you're not a Miami alum, how can you not root for Indiana to win the national title? An unbelievable story. And a little more parity in college football is good. That's what NIL has done. You got rich boosters that are willing to throw some money at a recruit. Come here, transfer here. Here's $5 million. College football's changed. It's changed a lot. And that doesn't mean that Georgia and Ohio State aren't going to still dominate. They aren't going to still be the blue bloods. They aren't still going to be programs that the best recruits will go to, but it's not just them now. And you could have a star wide receiver go to Ohio State, look around and go, I'm going to be buried on the depth chart for 2 years. Then they transfer. So it's not just winning the recruiting battle now. It's winning free agency. It's free agency in college football. However they end up regulating it, it's still going to be free agency where you can snag a guy from Ohio State, bring him to Indiana, immediately boost your program. It's changed. It's changed in a lot of ways. And I think it's great for the sport, but you do still have to have villains. And Kurt Cignetti's right at that point because he's going to be, if they win, he's going to be so cocky. And I love it. I'm rooting for him to be so cocky. If you're a Miami fan, you're probably not. But other than that, I mean, and listen, Miami could end up being the villains in a year or two anyway. That program's got a history. We know that. If they get back to the U, this could be an evolution in college football. It's not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. Proof that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to make some changes this offseason. Nick Ashew, Westwood One Sports. Nick Ashley, Westwood One Sports. If I'm Howie Roseman, I am getting rid of A.J. Brown as fast as possible this offseason. Now, he won't say it. He won't admit it. He talked to the media the other day and, of course, said it's hard to find great players in the NFL, and A.J. is a great player. God, does that sound like a GM conversation right off the bat? That's what we're going out and looking to do. We go out in free agency in the draft, and we're trying to find great players who love football, and he's that guy. So that would be my answer when asked whether they'd keep him around. The Eagles' drama is only going to get worse this offseason. Listen, their defense is what certainly kept them in a lot of games this year. It's what at least gave them a chance against the 49ers last week. But the reality is they've got a lot of talent there. They made the right move firing their offensive coordinator. I got a friend who's an Eagles fan, and I just text him pictures of, now their former offensive coordinator all the time because it was fun. He obviously hated him, though I think the egging of the house, come on, guys. Don't go egging a dude's house. Grow up. Like, let's not go down that road. But look, you can say whatever you want if you're Howie Roseman. Like, this is, and I love it. Like, when you hear that quote too, there's like this specific spark where he just go, you'll have to go out and find great players who love football. And he's that guy. Let's make sure we show that we think A.J. Brown loves football. Look, here's the thing about talented receivers. If they're not getting the football, you're paying them a ton of money. They're an overpaid decoy. That's really what it comes down to, because there's this whole, I call it the assembly line of success for wide receivers. You got to have a coordinator that calls the right plays, offensive line that protects the quarterback that's at least got enough time, or at least accurate enough or good enough to throw the football, get it to the wide receiver. All those things have to happen consistently to have a receiver have the type of year that you would expect from somebody like A.J. Brown, right? I mean, you're not getting that in Philadelphia. And some of it is the ups and downs and the limits maybe of Jalen Hurts. It's also the play calling. It's also the inconsistent. There was a lot of things that did not work in Philadelphia. The one thing I do know is that Howie Roseman is a GM that's going to make it work, and he's going to figure it out. And listen, you know me. I'm going to be unbiased. It pains me to say this. I'm a Commanders fan. You think I like complimenting the Eagles? You think it makes me happy? No. But I'm going to be honest. They're well run. And Howie Roseman's one of the best GMs in not just the NFL, in sports. Dude just throws, like, nobody else makes trades in the NFL week 3. Howie Roseman does. You're like, is this the NBA? What happened here? So if there's any team that's going to be aggressive, especially with what happened this year, it's the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be aggressive this offseason. I do think A.J. Brown gets traded. I think they try to keep him certainly out of the division. I'd tell you this, there are people in Washington like, what about A.J. Brown coming here? Stop. I was saying this on my DC show. I'm like, guys, stop. One, the Eagles aren't making the trade within the division. The only time they did that, it's Donovan McNabb, and that was when you had dopes in charge in Washington, and they were like, oh, the Eagles are going to give us Donovan McNabb? This will work out great. Idiots. Of course that wasn't going to work. They gave that trash away so quick. They realized, like, week 3, ooh, this McNabb thing ain't going to work out. So, no, he's not going to get traded within the division. I could see the Patriots going after A.J. Brown this offseason. I could see a lot of guys. Listen, he's a big, talented receiver. He's not getting the football. And when a lot of receivers don't get the football, they let you know they're not getting the football. That's a tale as old as time. But you can understand it a little bit, right? There's a lack of control for your success. And if you're a receiver that wants to be successful and you got a quarterback or an offensive coordinator that's not putting you in a position to succeed, eventually the frustration mounts. I get it to a point. It's the blow-ups on the sidelines you can't have, and it's the going out and the cryptic stuff on Instagram, and you can't be doing that. So that's what you're going to get from A.J. Brown. So you got to have a culture as an organization that can absorb that. Brandon Ayuk's the same way. It's like Brandon Ayuk was always in the doghouse in San Francisco. Always. You saw the talent at times. You saw the big play, and then they give him the big contract, tears his ACL, nothing since. He's going to be gone this offseason too. It happens. It happens all the time in the NFL. So I could see both those guys getting moved. You just got to be able to absorb the personality. If the headache outweighs the talent, you ain't making that trade. But if the talent still outweighs the headache and that scale's balanced enough for you as an organization, you do it, because talent still wins. Like, let's not overlook this. Talent still wins. I'll say this, the Texans, they're still, I think, my dark horse in these playoffs. That defense is so elite, man. It's so good. They're not going to have Nico Collins, though. So you're missing your number one receiver. You're missing your deep threat against the Patriots. But Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson coming off the edge. They're 0-6 in this round, though. They're 0-6 all time as a franchise in this divisional round. But if we saw that the Texans can overcome mistakes from C.J. Stroud, he can be turnover prone, and we saw that last week. But this defense is just so good, and the Patriots defense is really good too. There's a reason why that total, for those that dabble, 40.5. So it's gonna be a low scoring game. Could see this. No Nico Collins. You're missing a deep threat. Not that that's the only deep threat and the opportunity the Texans have, but Patriots love the deep ball. Texans #1 in the NFL against that. 4.8 air yards allowed per game. If you're interested in the exact number there, this feels like one of those games that's going to be a very defensive-minded game. And listen, that's what helps in the playoffs, right? We talked about this earlier. The weather gets bad. It's not going to be what it is. It's going to be in Chicago, but you have to have a team. The great teams don't just win because you've got a great quarterback. We have seen teams, I know this is crazy, but we have seen teams win Super Bowls in spite of their quarterbacks in some ways, or at least overcoming some of the mistakes, or a quarterback that's at a lower level and not elite. I mean, you have to have great quarterback play most of the season to get you to that point, but once the playoffs come, you need a little more defense. You need to be able to run the ball a little bit more. You got to be able to get some stops. You got to be able to play potentially in colder weather, depending on where you are. Although, as we move on, we're going to have fewer and fewer outdoor stadiums. I mean, how many markets at this point, how many cities are going to build new stadiums that continue to not have a roof? Like, open air stadiums have gone down to Buffalo's just built a new one, obviously. Chicago's going to do it. We know Green Bay will always pride themselves. Lambeau's always, they're not going to build an indoor Lambeau. Could you imagine? It'd be sacrilegious there. They're going to build a new one in D.C., and that thing's got a roof. It's pretty nice looking. People are in D.C. are all upset, like, oh, there should be open air. Why? This isn't Chicago. Trust me, there's a lot of soft people in D.C., whether it's on Capitol Hill or otherwise. They ain't doing that thing open air. That's going to have a roof. I mean, there's other things, obviously, too. You want to have the other events. You can't just have a stadium now that's based on football. It's everything. It's Premier League soccer coming in, and it's concerts, and it's a Super Bowl, obviously, is a huge deal. The Bills are never going to get a Super Bowl up in Buffalo because Buffalo in February is brutal. You either got to love it or you can't be there. You could have lake effects. Can you imagine a lake effect snow game for a Super Bowl? Yeah, it looks fun on TV, maybe. The NFL can't have that. The last game, their biggest thing, where all the eyeballs are on it, having a lake effect snow game sounds fun, not for a Super Bowl. Nobody wants that. We can pretend. Nobody wants that. Taylor Swift singing in a blizzard. Can you imagine? Although, actually, I'd probably like to see that. She'd do it, too. If there's anybody that would do it, it'd probably be Taylor Swift. She's like, I got this. Travis Kelce's out there dancing behind her. It's 2032. I'm just picking down the road in the future. But it won't happen. So Buffalo was like, all right, well, we're going to make ours open air. And that's their advantage. And certain cities, they have these opportunities. You got to take advantage of whatever opportunity is presented. If you can gain that advantage, I don't know how much of an advantage that gives Chicago against the Rams. I mean, to a point, but Caleb Williams still has to complete some passes. I know he makes those wild, amazing throws where he looks like Jumpman, but then there's other moments where you go, what the hell was that? Boy, did you notice that? Watch this, too, against the Rams. Watch how often the camera pans to Caleb Williams to see his facial expressions. He's become the new Aaron Rodgers. Every time something happens in whether it was a Packers game or a Jets game or a Steelers game, you always saw the camera go to Aaron Rodgers. What's he going to say? Can we read his lips? Oh, what's the facial expression going to look like? Who's he yelling at? That was Caleb Williams against Green Bay. And some of it was, I mean, guys ran some wrong routes. Not everything was on Caleb Williams, but there were some bad throws, some big mistakes. And any advantage that you can get to make it harder for a quarterback, if you can tough it out and you're used to playing in that cold, we're going to see that. And, teams, if you can win in those elements, good for you. I am interested to see this Patriots-Texans game beyond just the defense, though, because, it's interesting. I brought this up last week, and I do think it's something to just the NFL regular season can sometimes skew what a team may actually be, if that makes sense, right? Like the Patriots schedule, 10th easiest schedule since the merger. But at the same time, third best point differential this year. So you're winning the games that you're supposed to win. You're winning in the elements or against the team. You're winning how you should. It's like when we hold great players against a quarterback. He's surrounded by talent. Okay. and he's winning, and they're winning a lot. Same thing for the Patriots. Okay, they had an easy schedule, but they are still winning by significant margins at times this year. Next year is going to be the bigger gauge for me and where the Patriots are because you're going to have a first-place schedule. This always happens where a team had that big jump, right? Maybe the Giants make that big jump like we talked about before. John Harbaugh raises the floor right away for them. But then what happens the next year when a team deals with from a worst to first situation? And I'm not saying the Giants are going to be worst to first, but the Patriots were. And then you get the first place schedule. That's going to be next year for them. Now, listen, Drake May is a talented quarterback. I don't know why there are so many people that look at the draft and like when their team passes on a quarterback, they end up hating that quarterback. We saw it last year with Bears fans and Jaden Daniels. This year, Commanders fans are doing it with Drake May. It's just this vicious cycle. Drake May is a great quarterback, but we'll see what happens once you get to the point where there's more film and you see what he does in a playoff game. It wasn't great. It's not like Drake May was great in his playoff debut. And now he's going up against the Texans defense in a pass rush that's going to make his life hell. Caleb Williams, same thing. There's a great pass rush in LA that's going to be out in Chicago, but you know what I mean? And he's got to be able to take advantage of that. So these are two young quarterbacks this weekend that are going to be in positions where they're going to be running for their life at times. How do they handle that? And it could be a little bit of a disaster. There's a chance for that. This is where defense comes in. I love offense, but we can't sit here and say the defense doesn't still help win championships. All right, I'll be back next week. A lot of football this weekend. The best week of the year in sports. I love it. Nick Ashew, Westwood One Sports.